So this is my Eaton M90 Supercharger project for my RX8 because I am too much of a pauper to buy a proper Supercharger kit at about £10,000 because that's unfortunately how much they go for. You can get second-hand kits for about £4,500–5,000, but again, my budget is probably around the £2,000, so I'm doing a lot of DIY. So I picked this bad boy up. This little fella was about I think it was about 250 quid, thereabouts, 300 quid shipped or whatever it was, but needing a rebuild. So I knocked, I think it was 250 quid actually. But yeah, you can hear that rattle. That rattle shouldn't be there. And if I do this, you can hear a slight metallic clinking, along with that lovely induction-y sound. There is a metallic clinking sound which shouldn't be there. So I suspect it's actually these needle bearings here, these two here, because they're very rusty. They've obviously never been changed. What I hope it is not is the bearings behind these things, because if you pull these off, trying to get everything back together can be very difficult. You'd have to mark the teeth and get the splines exactly bang on from where they were before. Whether that is, I think if you pull these things off, then yeah, I'm not sure how I would go about getting that all matched up again. So I'd be a bit nervous to do that. So hopefully it's going to be these needle bearings. So on the snout, as far as the snout is concerned, there's the coupler. That's where the coupler connects. The original coupler was bouncing around in here and seemed to be a little bit broken. They'd obviously taken all the bolts off this and drained the oil before they sent it, because I couldn't get this open for love and the money, but I've got it open now. You can see I probably burnt a bit of the paint trying to heat it, but I got it off in the end. So this is, don't worry about that clinking noise, this is actually, there's no, I think this has been rebuilt previously, because there is almost no play in the snout, and that's normally the bit that you refurb. So I assume the snout's been refurbished, and now there's a slightly more challenging refurb going on in the back end here. So it's yeah, it's seen some life. They told me 50,000 miles. I don't believe a word of it. It's from an XJR6 4-litre Jaguar. There we go. Get that off. Sorry about that. So the other things that it came with include, let me drop this down. It came with this fella, which is particularly useful. So this goes on here, like so. I won't marry it up exactly, but that basically screws on there. That's the intake, so the air comes in here. And here we've got a boost control, a vacuum valve for this little actuator arm here. Now that actuator arm will trigger a divert valve, which is here. It's not actually on here. And this is the outgoing tube. So that sits there, and there's a little divert valve that sits between those two bits. That's where the air comes out, the boost comes out there and then goes into the engine. And then if the boost gets too high, what I can do is this little arm will open and close the divert valve, which allows the air to go round in a circle, which will relieve boost in the engine. Normally that would only really occur when you lift off from acceleration, so performance and raw power is not really a big issue at that point. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole of the Supercharger block. And the snout obviously goes on the end here, and the belt attaches to the engine. And so I've got to find a way of getting this boost into the engine and this intake out from the end. That bit should be pretty easy, to be honest. Some of the other challenges I've got are this is going to sit on top of and obscure the oil filler, so I've got to relocate the oil filler. What else am I going to have to do? I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to relocate the ignition coils as well. They need to do that on the Petit Supercharger kit. There's probably a good reason for that. Again, I haven't stripped the engine bay out because it's my daily driver. Yes, this is the worst idea that anyone on the internet has ever had. I'm going to do this to my daily driver whilst borrowing a shoddy old car from my parents. It's not that shoddy actually, but yeah, I'm going to need to get it back on the road as quickly as possible. Famous last words. But yeah, it is what it is. So I bought a kit. So there's my snout. Let's put this back over there. And put this over there. So I bought a kit from Powerhouse Automotive. They've been very helpful. This is the replacement supercharger oil that I put back in at the other end. This is a replacement coupler. Now, I've got a couple of options. The original coupler doesn't appear to be actually damaged. Where is it gone? Let me show you it. Here it is. It doesn't appear to be damaged. It seems to be in decent condition. Now, it's got spring mounting, and what that does is it will relieve rattling. If the tick over speed of your flywheel is not particularly smooth, these springs will absorb any changes in that and reduce rattling. If you put one of these on, it's basically a direct connect with no spring mount, which I've been told shouldn't be too much of a problem, and on most engines it isn't a problem, but sometimes it can cause a problem. So they were just kind enough to warn me that you takes your choice on that one, because that's about 20 quid, 25 quid, and a new one of those is about 45 quid. So I went for one of these anyway. Now then I've got the choice, and failing that I could look at potentially re-implementing this one if I get problems, because it just means pulling the snout off and changing the oil again. So the kit also comes with this replacement oil seal. So on this snout here we've got oil seal, bearing, and you're going to need a pulley puller to remove this, and then you're going to need a 6-ton arbor press, hydraulic arbor press, to remove those. So I'm trying to avoid that. Powerhouse did recommend changing the oil seal in here, but that means removing this pulley, which I'm kind of trying to avoid because I've got plenty of work on as it is. And what else do we get? We've got these needle bearings. They're pre-lubricated with very, very, very expensive, strange lubricant. Can't really see them too well through the bag, but I'm going to leave them closed for now. And that's going to be to change these out. So that's my first port of call. And then also we've got the rotor bearings as well, should I need them. If I don't need them, I will simply put these back on eBay and flog them and get a little bit of my money back. But yes, so there we go. There's another smaller one for the other end. So that's the kit I've got. I've also got this WD-40 fast acting degreaser, so I'll do a test of that versus Barry Scott's special Seal It Bang power cleaner degreaser, which I actually got for my kitchen, but is reasonably good. Need to check what's safe on which products basically and make sure everything works. And now the problem that I have, if I describe it to you, hear that? There's some play. And it's almost impossible to tell where that play comes from. It's not really backwards and forwards that way. It's not really that way. It seems to be side to side. And given that there is no play whatsoever in these cogs at this end, I'm kind of hoping it's these. So my first step is to pull out this and replace these. I'm just wondering if it's going to be something I can easily show you. They do just sort of, this thing here just pulls off, but it's not something I can do one-handed. So I'm going to just give me a second and I will shut off, pull it out and show you. So here we have the removed rotors. There you can kind of see the blue funky stuff that sits on those needle bearings, sits within the needle bearings, which you can see down at the bottom there, in there. But it's very difficult to tell what's damaged. You can't really tell by looking. I'm just kind of hoping that the needle bearings have just become a bit loose and it just allows them to get just a little bit too close at this end, which causes them to touch. I'm looking, there are some score marks along these edges here, which I don't think is the end of the world, as long as these things don't touch, because if there's anything worn off them, as long as the bearings get replaced and they no longer touch, whilst it might affect the amount of boost a little bit, they'll still work, if you get my drift. They shouldn't be touching here, and they shouldn't be touching at the bottom end either, really. Should be tiny clearance at both ends, but yeah, I don't know the first thing about superchargers, and I'm learning on the go, so we'll see what happens if we change the needle bearings. In for a penny, in for a pound. I've tried, I'm trying, and we'll see what happens. I've got one other thing that I would say is I'm tempted to try and knock out these needle bearings, because knocking them out with a hammer is going to be quite easy. Getting them back in is going to be a challenge, because I could just knock them out with brute force. Getting things back in is going to be tough, but what I thought was, if I was to take those needle bearings and put them in the freezer for a couple of hours until they are a very low temperature, and then put this block here in the oven to get it warm and expand, in theory I might be able to very gently reinsert the needle bearings without needing an arbor press, which would allow me to try this part at least of the rebuild without needing an arbor press. And since I don't technically need to get that off at the moment or rebuild the snout, that might save me the effort of either A, having to find somewhere that's got an arbor press that I can use, or B, buying one for about 60-70 quid on Tinternet. But one step at a time. I'm tempted to just get these out with some bits of wood and try punching them out. We'll see how it goes. Okay, well, I've got this socket which is going to give me access to just try and tap out one of these. So I'm going to give it a go with my persuader, which is this beastie. Now that side is actually a wood mallet, which is coming out quite badly, but the other side is also, as far as I can tell, that's sort of rubberish. So I might give it a go with this quite gently and see what happens. And bear in mind that it's also sitting on a plastic cutting mat, which is also going to relieve a little bit of the impact. So relieving the impact is key. I don't want to damage the form or shape of this Supercharger kit one bit. It's very important that I do not do that. So we're going to give it a go and see how it is. I can't do it whilst holding the phone, I'm sorry. So biff baff poof. Okay, I have failed so far with the hammer. I used this plank of wood. As you can see, I've used it quite a few times. I've given it quite a few thwacks to try and punch it out through. There are a couple of ways it could go. Is maybe they're supposed to come out this way and they're not going to come out the other way. I don't know which way they're supposed to go in. What I do know is that most Eaton Superchargers, they have to go in and come out. They have to go and come out by coming out this way, because you can't get at the back of them on a lot of other Superchargers. There's just a big metal forming around here, and you literally can't get at the back of them. So what you have to do is you have to drill a hole in and inject stuff in at a huge, really high pressure to push them out, and then you push things back in, which is why I'm whacking from this side. Answers on a postcard, please. I guess we'll find out. I'm gonna have to find somebody with a press. A friend of mine has a garage quite a drive away from me, but he has a garage and a bit of knowledge, and he may have attempted to rebuild one of these before. I don't know. I'll give him a buzz and see what he says. Take it easy, guys.